I want to show you how I made a tennis game on a tennis ball. The model is in HO scale, which a pushpin is about the height of a person 6 foot tall. I'll break down how I developed the 3D models and the process of printing and painting. So we'll start by building the 3D model. We'll crack open Blender. We don't want the cube. Instead we'll add a sphere, which will be our tennis ball, which we won't actually print, but we'll use that to model on. Our tennis ball is around 65 millimeters, so that's what we'll size our sphere to. So I started with the net, and I thought the white lines on the tennis ball would be a natural place to put the posts for the net. In its narrowest point, the white lines are about 42 mils apart. So I used a simple block as a guide. The posts here are a little bit short. With the sag in the net, the top would be almost touching the ground, or the top of the ball in the middle. So I bumped up the height a little bit. We need a net tape. To create a sag in the net, I created a bunch of loop cuts, then dragged down the middle loop cut using the proportional editing tool. I wasn't really happy with how that looked, and I found that the sphere fall off type looked better than the smooth type. So now we need the actual net itself. I did think about using a fabric, and I found this material, but I think the holes were still too big. So I decided the best way would be to 3D model it and print it. Basically I just used a whole heap of cylinders repeated in a pattern. At this point I thought it was looking good until I discovered these troublemakers out the back somehow ended up out of line. Now we're back in business. So next we need an umpire's chair. A quick search on Google and I think I like the look of this green one. So I dropped the image into Lychee. Lychee does an amazing job of creating a 3D model from an image. I then dropped the 3D file into Blender, scaled it to size, and positioned it at the end of the net. Now we have a slight problem. The chair is in the middle of nowhere and it's hanging out in the middle of space. So to get around this, I extended the legs down to the ball and used the Boolean modifier to cut the legs off at the ball. I added a couple of brackets to match the rest of the chair and I think we're looking pretty good. So now we need an umpire in the chair. So I jumped back into Meshy, and this time I used the text to 3D model feature to generate a 3D model of an umpire. I think this guy looks good. I really like his jacket. We don't need the tennis racket or the box, but we can get rid of that in a moment. I remeshed to simplify the model, as the detail is far more than what we need at this scale. Plus it'll make it easier to play with in Blender. I dropped this guy into Blender and scaled him down to size. If we push the / key, we can isolate him from everything else. We can delete the racket and also delete the box. Now we have a new problem. He has a big hole in his bum. So to fix this, I used the cube to fill in the space. I think we're looking pretty good. Now we can put this guy on the seat. The next problem is that the table tray is getting in the way. So I fixed this, creating a little block that we'll use to subtract any part of the chair inside using, again, the Boolean modifier. And I think we're now laughing. His feet are in the air, so I adjusted the step so that his feet are resting on it. Now we need some players. So again, jumping back to Meshy, I created this guy using an image of a famous tennis player I found on Google. You may be able to recognise it. The racket obviously didn't work, but that's okay. We can fix that up. We'll drop him into Blender, scale him down, and put him in position. I deleted the attempt of a racket, and I'll just replace it with a little stub that I'll use to glue a racket to after we print. His feet are obviously on a flat surface, so a little bit of an adjustment to make it look like he's playing on an inclined surface. It's a little bit rough, but at this scale we'll get away with it. I think we're looking good. So I created a racket in Meshy, remeshed it, and dropped it into position. I'll just cut this stub back to get it out of the way. The strings obviously didn't work, so I deleted them and replaced them with a much larger cylinder pattern that would print at this scale. But cutting the strings off is where things went completely pear-shaped. The knife tool only seems to cut the surfaces on the front. However, after a complete disaster, I did end up with something that resembled a racket. The frame looks very thin between the strings and the handle, so I added a couple of cylinders to beef it up a bit. So next we need another tennis player. This guy, I think, needs to be the server. I struggled to find an image on Google that would be appropriate, so I took a photo of myself with my leg on a box in an underarm serve position. The racket didn't work, but that's okay, we'll use the one I just made. And we need a ball. Meshi is amazing, however, I think this area could be a little bit smaller to be more accurate. The umpire is staring straight ahead into space, so I dropped his head down a little bit and to the left so that he's looking at the player about to serve. So I think now we're good to go. So now we can jump over to Lychee. I dropped the individual files in and then clicked repair to fix any holes or structural issues, which I don't actually really know what structural issues are, but anyway. Red is bad and blue is good. I spaced out the models and rotated them to try and minimise islands and overhangs. In hindsight, there was far too many supports on that chair. It makes it so much more difficult after it's printed to clean it up. But that's okay, we're learning. I make a raft under each model and then arrange them so that they can be all printed on one large raft. And then duplicate the whole thing so that they'll have two sets. Now we're ready to export and slice the file. So fire up the printer. I first lift and lower the build plate a few times just to help mix the resin that's been sitting there for a bit. And then we're off to the races. This is what it looked like after a clean and a cure. The tennis rackets weren't very successful, so I printed a new bunch of them. And then I glued each one of the models to a small wooden stick with a drop of super glue. And then I gave the models a quick spray with some primer. I used Mr. Finishing Surfacer, 1500 pink, thin 50/50. Umpire is up first. I start with the skin. And then grey pants and a grey shirt. Red jacket for this guy, which I think came up good. And then white shoes and a white cap. So next up is this guy. I start again with the skin, then white shoes, white shirt, blue shorts, and a green cap. So I gave this good looking guy some red shorts, white shoes, white shirt. White seems to be popular in tennis, so we'll go with white. Some brown hair. And a little green tennis ball. So I used the airbrush to spray some matte black for the net and a little bit of white for the net tape. A little tickle of white on the rackets, and finally brown wood on the chair. So once the paint was dry, I trimmed back the rackets and with a little bit of super glue attached them to both the players. So just to help take the shine off, I used a little bit of this MrColor flat clear. First I used the flame to clean up the fluff on the ball so it didn't look like we were playing tennis in the long grass. A bit of a before and after shot here. First up is the net with a little bit of glue on the bottom. Then the umpire's chair. A little drop of glue on the seat for the umpire. Then the players with a little bit of glue on their feet. And then we're done. Overall, I'm really happy with how it came together. Next time I'd definitely avoid the gloss finish, but it's all part of the learning. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.